On my wedding day, my father projected a fake intimate video of me on the church screen. He shouted, "Look at what a whore she is," in front of 300 people. He wanted to destroy me, but my fiancé noticed the fake, and what he did to my father at the altar was epic. "Hi, my dear friends. Come on over, sit here with me in my kitchen. Do you smell that wonderful aroma of peaches cooking?" That's right. I'm here making my preserves and jams, which is something I absolutely love to do. The steam rising from the pot, the sugar caramelizing, the fruits releasing that beautiful fragrance. Ah, this soothes my soul. My name is Camilla Beatrice Stevens. I'm 76 years old, and I live here in Asheville, North Carolina, the land of the Blue Ridge Mountains and beautiful fall colors. I was born right here in this mountain town, where the winters are real and we warm ourselves with hot coffee and good conversation. These days, my life is simple and peaceful, thank God. I spend my days here in this kitchen, preparing these peach preserves, fig preserves, orange marmalade. I also make jellies, apple butter, and pumpkin butter. It's therapy for me, you know? Each jar I seal, each lid I tighten. It feels like I'm storing a little piece of love to share later. This tradition of making preserves came from my maternal grandmother, Grandma Josephine. She had a huge orchard in the backyard of her farm, and in the summer, when all the fruits ripened at once, she'd spend entire weeks in the kitchen making these wonders. I was very young, must have been about 7 or 8 years old, and I'd stand right next to her, drying the jars, sticking on the labels, licking the wooden spoon covered with jam. Grandma Josephine used to say, "Camilla, my flower, the secret to preserves is the same as life. You need patience, you need to know when to stir and when to leave it alone. And you have to put love in it, because without love, even sugar tastes bitter." I kept those words in my heart for the rest of my life. Today, I'm here in this same kitchen where I raised my children, where I received my grandchildren, where I lived through the joys and sorrows of this long life of mine. The house is simple, but it's cozy. I have my herb pots in the window, chives, parsley, basil. I have my old wood-burning stove, which I still use on the coldest days. And I have this big wooden table full of sterilized jars waiting to receive the cooked fruits. Oh, and before I continue telling my story, I want to make a special request to all of you watching right now, wherever you are. Tell me here in the comments, from which corner of the United States or the world are you watching me? And also tell me, what time of day did you find this video from this old lady here? Early morning with your hot coffee? After lunch? During that afternoon break? Or in the evening before bed? I read each comment with so much affection, imagining you there, taking time from your busy lives to listen to this grandmother's stories. Please tell me. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, click that red button, turn on the bell, because I have so many stories to tell. Stories of overcoming, of pain, but also of victory. Let's create this family, let's support each other. And look, my dear friends, the story I'm going to tell you today. This one is hard to even begin. It's about the day that should have been the happiest of my life, my wedding day. But it turned into a nightmare in front of 300 people inside a church. A nightmare orchestrated by the man who should have protected me, by the man who gave me life. My own father tried to destroy me that day, sweethearts. He tried to end my dignity, my name, my future. But God is just, and true love is stronger than any lie. Come with me on this journey. Take a deep breath, because this story will move you. But I promise that in the end, we'll learn together about forgiveness, about strength, and about how true love sees beyond appearances. I was born right here in Asheville on March 15, 1949, in a big house in the downtown area, near the main square. My father was Colonel Humberto Sterling, a man who had made his career in the army and then became an important figure in local politics. He owned land, had cattle ranches in the surrounding areas, and his name was respected, or rather feared, by everyone in the region. When he walked down the street, men tipped their hats. When he entered a place, silence fell like a stone. My mother was Ondine, a delicate woman with fair skin and black hair always pulled back in a tight bun. She came from a traditional family from Charleston, South Carolina, and had married my father through an arrangement between the families, as was customary back then. My mother was quiet, obedient, always with a rosary in her hand and her eyes downcast. She spent her days taking care of the house, embroidering, praying. I never, in all my childhood, heard my mother raise her voice to my father, not even once. I had 2 siblings. Augustus was the oldest, 6 years older than me, my father's pride and joy. From childhood, Augustus was raised to be the heir to the colonel's empire. He learned to ride horses, care for cattle, speak harshly to the workers. And there was Nancy, my younger sister, 4 years younger than me. Nancy was tiny, fragile, always sick with something. My mother was constantly running with her to the doctor. Our house was enormous, 2 stories, with those tall wooden windows painted dark green, red tiles, and an iron gate that creaked every time someone opened it. Inside, everything was dark and silent. The thick curtains didn't let in much light. There was a visiting room we could only enter when important people came over, full of heavy mahogany furniture, a grandfather clock that chimed every hour with a sound that echoed throughout the entire house. My mother kept everything impeccably clean, with the help of Miss Carmela, our housekeeper, an elderly woman who had lived with us since before I was born. My room was on the 2nd floor, a small space with an iron bed, a pine wardrobe, and a window that overlooked the backyard. I loved that window because from there I could see the open sky, the clouds racing by, the birds flying free. It was my escape from that heavy atmosphere downstairs. The routine of my childhood was as rigid as a Swiss watch. My father woke up at 5 in the morning, and the whole house had to wake up with him. We had breakfast in silence, homemade bread with butter, boiled milk, sometimes a piece of farm cheese. My father read the newspaper, and no one could make noise. Then he'd leave to take care of business, and we'd breathe a little easier. I studied at a Catholic school, Our Lady of Mercy Academy, which was 3 blocks from home. My mother walked me there and picked me up every day, holding hands, walking slowly along the uneven stone sidewalk. At school, I was quiet, obedient, got good grades because I knew my father demanded perfection. He always said, "A Sterling cannot be mediocre. We are different. We are superior." After school, I had to go straight home. I couldn't stop at the little park, couldn't play in the street like the other girls. My father said that a girl from a good family shouldn't be exposed, that the street was a place for common people. So I spent my afternoons in the backyard, playing alone or with Nancy when she was healthy. We played with dolls, house, school. I had a rag doll that my grandma Josephine had made for me, with yellow yarn braids and a little calico dress. I called her Clara. Sometimes when my father was in a good mood, which was rare, he'd let us go to Grandma Josephine's farm on weekends. Ah, those were the best days of my life. At the farm, I could run barefoot, climb trees, eat fruit right off the branch. Grandma Josephine let me help in the kitchen, and that's where I learned to make preserves, as I already told you. She was so different from my father. She laughed loudly, sang while she cooked, hugged me tight, and said I was the most beautiful granddaughter in the world. But those moments were few. Most of the time, I lived in that silent house, always afraid of doing something wrong, always walking on tiptoes so as not to bother my father. Because my father, my dear friends, my father was a man with an explosive temper. Any little thing that displeased him, and he'd start yelling, banging on the table, making everyone tremble with fear. I remember one time, I must have been about 8 years old when I spilled orange juice on the dining room tablecloth. It was an accident. The glass slipped from my hand. My father turned red with rage, stood up from his chair with such force that it almost fell backward. He screamed at me in front of everyone, saying I was clumsy, that I didn't pay attention, that I was going to end up being a disgrace to the family. My mother turned white but said nothing. Augustus laughed quietly, as if it were funny. And I stood there, paralyzed, with tears streaming down, feeling like I had committed the worst sin in the world. From an early age, I learned that my father's love was conditional. He only treated me well when I did exactly what he expected, when I got straight A's, when I behaved like a lady, when I stayed quiet in my corner. Any deviation, any sign of my own personality, and he'd cut me with sharp words or with that icy look that hurt more than any slap. I had a little friend at school, Ida, the pharmacist's daughter. We had arranged to play at her house one Saturday afternoon. I was so happy. But when I asked my father, he said no, just no. You're not going to be running around like a street urchin. A girl's place is at home. I cried, I begged, but it was useless. And Ida never really talked to me again after that, because she thought I didn't want to go. Little by little, I understood that my life wasn't mine. It was property of my father, of the sterling name, of the family honor. I was an extension of his ego, an object he molded as he wished. And I, innocent child that I was, thought that was normal, that all fathers were like that. When I turned 12, in 1961, things started to change a bit. My body began to change. I was becoming a young woman. And my father became even more rigid, even more vigilant. He started controlling even the clothes I wore, the way I combed my hair, the tone of voice I used. "You're becoming a woman," he'd say, with that hard look. "And women in my family need to be impeccable, without stain, without blemish. Because the sterling name is worth gold, and I'm not going to let anyone tarnish it." I didn't fully understand what that meant at the time, but I felt, deep down, that this control would only get worse as I grew older. My adolescence passed too quickly, and at the same time, too slowly. The years between 13 and 17 were a blur of rules, prohibitions, and that constant feeling of being watched. My father controlled my every step: who I talked to at school, what time I came home, what clothes I wore, even the length of my skirt he measured with his eagle eyes. In 1966, when I was 17, I finished high school, and then came the first big fight of my life with my father. I wanted to study. I wanted to go to college for English literature in Charlotte. I loved to read, loved to write. I had a notebook full of poems that I hid under my mattress. But when I told my father about college, he looked at me as if I had said the greatest insanity in the world. "College? For what? You're going to marry a good man that I'll choose, and you'll take care of his house. Women don't need education beyond the basics. That's for people who want to climb in life. And you were already born at the top, Camilla. Don't ruin everything with these modern ideas." I cried. I begged. But it was useless. My mother, as always, said nothing. She kept embroidering in her corner, pretending she wasn't listening. And so, my dream died right there. I began living in that house, helping my mother with chores, embroidering, cooking, waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't even know. My father started introducing me to suitors. Sons of ranchers, sons of politicians, older men, all cut from the same cloth, arrogant, chauvinistic, who looked at me as if I were a filly at a cattle auction. I hated those formal dinners where I had to smile and pretend interest while those men talked about their lands, their possessions, their plans to build a traditional family. I felt suffocated, imprisoned. And then, in April 1971, at 22 years old, my life changed. I met Lucas. It was on an autumn day, late afternoon. I was returning from church, one of the few outings my father allowed me, as long as I was accompanied by Miss Carmela. We were passing through the town square when it started raining that way. It only rains here in the mountains, a heavy, cold rain that soaks you in seconds. Miss Carmela and I ran to take shelter under the awning of an electronics store, and that's where I saw him for the first time, Lucas Henry Oliver. He was fixing the store's wiring on a ladder with a toolbox beside him. When the rain started, he quickly climbed down and took shelter under the same awning as us. He was thin, wore glasses, had a shy smile, and skilled hands that never stopped moving. He started talking to us. Very polite, very kind. Quite a downpour, isn't it? I think it'll last a while. Would you like to sit here on the bench, ma'am? He offered to Miss Carmela, who thanked him and started chatting with him. He told us he was a computer and electronics technician, that he worked repairing equipment around town, that he had studied through correspondence courses because he didn't have money to leave Asheville. I stood there, quiet, but my heart was racing. There was something about him, something different from all those men my father had introduced me to. Lucas spoke with passion about his work, about the computers that were starting to arrive in America, about how technology was going to change the world. His eyes sparkled. And when he smiled at me, apologizing for talking too much, I felt butterflies in my stomach for the first time in my life. When the rain passed, we said goodbye, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. In the following days, I made up any excuse to pass through the square, hoping to find him again. And 3 weeks later, I did. He was sitting on a bench in the square, eating a sandwich and reading a technical manual. I gathered all my courage and sat on the bench next to him. "Hi," I said, my voice trembling. "Do you remember me? From the rain." His face lit up. "Of course I remember, the pretty young lady from the awning." And we started talking, hours and hours of conversation. He told me about his humble family, about his father who was a carpenter, about his mother who did laundry for others. And I, for the first time in my life, talked about myself for real, about the books I liked, about my desire to study, about how I felt trapped. Lucas listened to me with an attention that no one had ever given me. He didn't judge me, didn't interrupt me, just listened, with that calm and sweet way of his. And when the sun began to set, he held my hand, the first time a man had touched me with affection, other than my father or brothers, and said, "Camilla, I know we've just really met, but I feel that you're special. I'd like to get to know you better. Could we meet again?" I knew I was doing something crazy. My father would never approve. But I said yes. For 7 months we met in secret. Always in the square, always quickly, always afraid someone would tell my father. Lucas was everything I had always dreamed of, kind, intelligent, respectful. He never tried to kiss me without permission, never rushed me into anything. He just wanted to talk, to know my soul. And I fell madly in love with that simple man with calloused hands and a huge heart. In November 1971, Lucas asked for my hand in marriage. It was under an oak tree in the square, kneeling, with a simple silver ring he had bought with 3 months' salary. I cried so much I could barely speak. "Yes," I said. "Yes, yes, yes." But we knew the storm was coming. I would have to tell my father. When I got home that day, my father was in the living room, reading the newspaper. My mother was embroidering on the sofa. I took a deep breath, gathered all my courage, and spoke. "Father, I need to talk to you. I met a young man, a good man, hard-working, honest, and we want to get married." The silence that fell in that room was deathly. My father slowly folded the newspaper, very slowly. He looked at me with those icy eyes I knew so well. And then he exploded. "What did you say? You met someone and didn't ask my permission? Who is this bum?" "His name is Lucas, Father. Lucas Henry Oliver. He's a technician in—" "Technician?" My father stood up from his armchair as if he'd been shocked. "You're telling me you want to marry a mechanic? A nobody? A sterling daughter marrying a laborer?" "He's not a laborer, Father. He's an electronics technician. I don't want to know what he is." The vein in my father's neck was bulging, purple. "You're not going to marry that trash. You'll marry who I choose, a man of our standing, not some pauper who'll tarnish the sterling name." I started crying, but this time not from fear, from anger. "I'm going to marry him, Father, with your support or without it." The slap came so fast I didn't even see it. My head spun to the side, and I tasted blood in my mouth. My mother screamed softly and ran to me, but my father pushed her aside. "You're not going to marry him. And if you insist, I'll destroy that worm. I'll make him lose his job. I'll make him disappear from Asheville. Did you hear me well, Camilla? I will destroy him." That night, locked in my room, with my face burning and my heart broken, I understood for the first time the magnitude of hatred my father was capable of feeling. And I understood that this wouldn't end well. But I didn't imagine, not even in my worst nightmares, how far he would be willing to go. After that terrible night, things got much worse at home. My father no longer spoke to me. When we crossed paths in the hallways, he looked away, as if I were a ghost, as if I no longer existed. It was worse than the shouting, worse than the violence. It was a cold, heavy silence that suffocated. But I didn't give up. Lucas and I continued meeting, now even more secretly. He wanted to face my father man to man, but I didn't let him. I knew my father. I knew what he was capable of. And I was afraid, very afraid, of what he could do to Lucas. It was in February 1972 that things started getting even stranger. My father suddenly changed his attitude. One morning during breakfast, he spoke to me for the first time in 3 months. "Camilla." His voice was controlled, but I felt the venom behind it. "I've thought a lot about your stubbornness, and I decided that maybe I was too hard. If you really want to marry this Lucas, then fine." I almost choked on my bread. My mother stopped stirring her coffee and looked at him, surprised. Even Augustus, who was having breakfast with us, raised an eyebrow. "What?" I could hardly believe it. "You're saying you accept?" "I accept, but with one condition." He looked into my eyes, and I felt a chill. Something was wrong. "I'll pay for the wedding. I want it to be a beautiful party, worthy of the Sterling name. I don't want people saying my daughter got married like poor folk in some shabby courthouse. It'll be at the Main Street church, with everything of the best quality." I should have been suspicious, should have seen the trap. But I was so naive, so desperate for his approval, that I believed. I really believed he had changed his mind, that he had accepted my marriage. "Thank you, Father." I spoke with a choked voice. "Thank you so much. Just one more thing." He cut a piece of cheese with his knife, slowly. "I'm going to prepare a special surprise for you on the wedding day. A tribute. I'll project on a screen in the church some photos of you as a child, family videos. It'll be beautiful. But it's a surprise, okay? Don't say anything to Lucas." I agreed, emotional. What a fool I was. What a fool. The following months were a whirlwind. My father really paid for everything. The imported wedding dress, the flowers, the catering, the engraved invitations on quality paper with gold letters. The church was reserved for a Saturday afternoon, June 17th, 1972. 300 confirmed guests. All of Asheville's elite would be there. Lucas was uncomfortable with so much pomp. "Camilla, I don't know. Your father spending all this, do you think he really accepted? Or is he plotting something?" "No, love. He changed. I felt it. He just wants us to be happy." My God, how blind I was. During the week of the wedding, my father became even more attentive. He asked about the details, if I was nervous, if I needed anything. He even talked to Lucas once, in front of our house, and shook his hand. "Take care of my daughter, son." Lucas left there a bit disconcerted but relieved. On Friday night, the eve of the wedding, I couldn't sleep well. I kept tossing and turning in bed, with that nervous feeling every bride has. I thought about what my life with Lucas would be like, having my own home, finally being free. I looked at the wedding dress hanging in the wardrobe and smiled in the dark. Saturday came, the most important day of my life, or the day that would become my worst nightmare. I woke up early, had breakfast, and the hired women came to help me get ready. The dress was French lace with a long train, tulle veil. They did my hair in curls, placed the flower crown, painted my face. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I was beautiful. I looked like a princess. At 3 in the afternoon, we arrived at the Main Street church. My God, my dear friends, how beautiful that church was. White flowers everywhere, satin ribbons, lit candles. The organ played softly. The pews were packed with elegant people in hats and expensive suits. And there at the front, near the altar, I saw Lucas waiting. He was in a black suit I had never seen, his hair combed to the side, his clean glasses shining. When he saw me enter, his eyes filled with tears. I walked down the center aisle on my father's arm to the sound of the wedding march. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. My father was serious, erect, greeting people with nods. When we reached the altar, he handed me over to Lucas and went to sit in the first row. The ceremony began. Father Anselm, whom I'd known since childhood, gave the blessings, read the biblical texts. We exchanged vows. I said, "I do," with a firm voice, looking into Lucas's eyes. He said, "I do too," squeezing my hands tightly. We exchanged rings, 2 simple gold bands we had chosen together. "Now," said the priest, "before the final blessing and the kiss of the newlyweds, the bride's father would like to make a special tribute." That's when my world began to crumble. My father stood up, climbed the altar steps, and grabbed the microphone that was on a stand to the side. He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a cold, dangerous smile, like someone about to strike. "Good afternoon, everyone. Before my daughter seals her destiny with this young man, I would like to show you her true face. Because truth, my friends, is the most important thing in a union, and I cannot, in good conscience, let this marriage proceed based on lies." My stomach froze. Lucas looked at me, confused. I looked at my father, feeling panic rising in my throat. "Father, what are you doing?" My voice came out weak, trembling. "Lights." He ignored my question and signaled to the operator. The church lights went out. The giant screen that had been installed behind the altar lit up. It started with photos of me as a baby, as a child, as he had promised. People smiled, thought it was nice. My mother, in the first row, had her hand on her chest, emotional. And then, the image cut. Suddenly, on that huge screen, a video appeared. A video that paralyzed me with horror. It was a room, a cheap motel room, and there was a woman there. A woman with my face, my exact face. She was with men. Several men. I can't describe it in detail, my dear friends, because it's too horrible, but it was an intimate scene of a sexual nature, explicit. And that face was mine. The church exploded in murmurs, muffled screams, women covering children's eyes, men standing up from their chairs. Father Anselm turned white as paper. "No!" I screamed. "That's not me! I didn't do that!" But no one heard me. The video continued, relentless, projected on that monstrous screen. My father, at the altar, shouted into the microphone with that thunderous voice, "Look! Look at what a whore she is! Is this the woman you want to take on, Lucas? A slut who sells herself? Who dishonors the Sterling family name? Is this the woman who'll carry our surname?" I collapsed. My legs gave out and I fell to my knees right there, on the cold floor of the altar. The veil spread around me. Tears flowed uncontrollably, blurring everything. I heard the screams, the accusations, the scandal. I heard my mother sobbing. I heard people cursing me. And I looked at that screen, at that face that was mine but wasn't, and I didn't understand. How was that possible? How did that video exist? I had never done that. I was a virgin, for God's sake. I had never been with any man. But no one would believe me. Not with that proof there, in high definition, in front of 300 people. My life was over. There, at that altar, On the day that should have been the happiest of my existence. My father had destroyed me. And the worst part? When I lifted my eyes, looking for Lucas in the chaos, I saw him standing, looking at me, and I thought he was going to abandon me too, that he was going to believe that lie. But then something happened, something that would change everything. I was there, on my knees on the cold church floor, feeling the weight of 300 pairs of eyes judging me, condemning me. The veil had fallen to the side, all wrinkled. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't control them. And that damned video was still playing on the screen, without stopping, in an infernal loop. People had stood up from the pews. Some were leaving, horrified. Others were shouting horrible things at me. "Shameless! Filthy! How dare she!" I heard a woman scream, and she still had the nerve to wear white. My mother had her head down, sobbing uncontrollably, covered by her shawl. Augustus was standing next to her, arms crossed, a satisfied smile at the corner of his mouth. He was enjoying this. My own brother was enjoying seeing me destroyed, and my father? My father was at the altar, standing next to the paralyzed priest, microphone in hand, head held high, that look of triumph. He had succeeded. He had destroyed me in front of everyone, had ended my life, my name, any chance of happiness. And he was happy about it. "Do you still want to marry her, boy?" My father turned to Lucas, with contempt dripping from every word. "Do you still want this used woman, this liar who deceived you all this time? Because I can have the video stopped now if you want to run out of here and never look back. No one will judge you. You're the victim here. She's the filthy whore." I couldn't look at Lucas. I didn't have the courage. Because deep down, a part of me thought he was going to believe it. That he was going to leave me there, abandoned at the altar, humiliated. After all, how would I prove my innocence? How would I explain that video where my face was so clear, so sharp? I started having a panic attack. My chest tightened, my breathing became short, too fast. Everything spun around me. I felt like I was going to faint, that I was going to die right there. And a part of me wanted to die, wanted to disappear, to cease to exist. "I didn't do it," I whispered, but my voice was so weak that I didn't even hear myself properly. "I didn't do that. I didn't." That's when I felt a hand holding my hand, a firm, warm hand that gently pulled me up. I lifted my eyes, blurred with tears, and saw Lucas. He was there, in front of me, still holding my hand. He hadn't let me go, not even for a second. "Lucas!" My voice came out broken. "I swear to God, I swear on my life, that's not me. I know." His voice came out calm, firm, without any hesitation. "I know it's not you." "How do you know?" I almost screamed in desperation. "You saw the video. Everyone saw. How can you know?" And then he did something I'll never forget. He let go of my hand, turned to the screen that was still showing those horrible images, and kept looking. Not with disgust, not with anger, but with those technicians' eyes, analytical, attentive to details. He was looking for something. My father laughed loudly. Want to see it again? Are you enjoying what you see? Want to confirm exactly what kind of—" "Shut up." Lucas cut him off without even looking. His voice was icy, cutting like glass. I had never heard Lucas speak that way. The people in the church fell silent, shocked. Lucas climbed the altar steps, walked right past my father, and went to the laptop controlling the projection. He paused the video on a specific scene. The image froze on the screen, the woman with my face raising her arms. "How much did you spend on this?" Lucas turned to my father, eyes narrowed. 10,000? 20? 50? Because this edit is professional, state-of-the-art deepfake technology. Must have cost a fortune. My father stopped smiling. A muscle in his jaw tensed. "What are you talking about, boy?" "I work with technology." Lucas took the microphone from my father's hands with a firm pull. I know deep fakes. I know how to identify manipulated videos, and this one, it's very well done, almost perfect. But there's a problem. He pointed to the screen. The person who made this studied Camilla's face perfectly, copied every detail, but they don't know her body, not like I do. My heart jumped. What was he saying? Camilla, Lucas continued, and his voice echoed throughout the entire church, has a birthmark, crescent-shaped, under her left arm. I saw that mark when we went swimming in the river, when she raised her arm to comb her hair. It's small, discreet, but it's there. It's always been there. He paused, letting the information sink in. The woman in this video has completely smooth skin. No spots, no marks, nothing. The silence in the church was absolute. All the people looked at the screen, trying to see what Lucas was talking about. Don't believe me? Lucas came down from the altar and walked to me. He held my left hand so gently, I wanted to cry again. Excuse me, love. And there, in front of everyone, he lifted my left arm and gently tore the lacy sleeve of the wedding dress. Not violently, carefully, like someone unveiling a precious secret. And there it was, the little mark I'd had since birth. In the shape of a perfect crescent moon, café au lait colored, under my left arm. Lucas turned my arm for the guests to see, then turned to the screen where the paused image showed that woman with her arm raised. Smooth skin, no mark at all. This, Lucas said, pointing to the screen, is not Camilla. It's a fake. A lie created by a man so obsessed with control that he'd rather destroy his own daughter than lose her. He turned to my father, and the hatred in his eyes was palpable. How much did you pay? Huh, Colonel? How much did it cost you to have this fake video made? My father was red, the veins in his neck bulging. But he didn't answer. He couldn't. Because I'm sure, Lucas continued, walking to the laptop, that if I search the history of this computer, I'll find evidence. Emails, transfers, conversations with the company that made the edit. And he did exactly that. In front of everyone, he opened the folders on the USB drive my father had given to the operator. He dug through the hidden files, and he found it. Here. Lucas projected on the screen, replacing the damned video. It was an email with the header, from Silva and Costa Digital Agency to Colonel Humberto Sterling, subject, deepfake video completed, total amount, $50,000. The church exploded, but this time not against me, against him, against my father. People stood up, shouting, calling my father a monster, cruel, inhuman. Lucas's groomsmen came to the altar, surrounding my father, who tried to run away. Father Anselm, recovering his voice, shouted, "May God have mercy on your soul, Humberto. What you did is unforgivable." And I stood there, still trembling, still in shock, but now with a spark of hope igniting in my chest. Lucas had defended me, had saved me, had proven my innocence in front of everyone. He came back to me, held my face with both hands, and looked deep into my eyes. I know you, Camilla. I know your heart, and I would never, never believe such a lie. You're the purest woman I know. I collapsed on his chest, crying, but now with relief, with gratitude, with deep love for that man who didn't abandon me in my worst moment. And when I looked at the altar, I saw my father being held by the indignant guests. He looked at me, and in those eyes I saw pure hatred. But I also saw defeat. He had lost everything. What happened in the following minutes was like a storm. The entire church was on its feet, people shouting, pointing at my father. There were ladies crying with rage, men yelling that he was a disgrace. The scandal was total. Father Anselm had to hold the bronze crucifix from the altar, as if he needed divine strength to process what had just witnessed. My father tried to leave through the side aisle, but Lucas's groomsmen, 3 work friends of his, simple but strong guys, blocked the passage. Miguel, the tallest of them, pointed his finger in my father's face. "You're not leaving here until you explain this. You tried to destroy an innocent young woman." "Get out of my way!" my father roared, with that commanding voice that always worked. But this time, no one moved. He had lost all respect, all authority. He was just a cruel man, exposed in his evil. Lucas gently released me and descended the altar steps. He walked to my father, slowly, controlled. But I could see the contained rage in every muscle of his body. When he was face to face with my father, the difference was striking. My father, big, stocky, broad-shouldered. Lucas, thin, shorter, wearing glasses. But Lucas had something my father would never have. True dignity. "Colonel Sterling," Lucas's voice was icy. "You tried to humiliate your daughter so you wouldn't lose control over her. You spent $50,000 to create a lie, to tarnish her name, to end her life. All because you can't stand the idea of her making her own choices." "I did what had to be done," my father shouted, completely losing his composure. "She was going to marry a nobody, a pauper. She was going to throw away everything I built, all our tradition. I couldn't allow it." "So you preferred to destroy her?" Lucas took a step closer. "You'd rather end her than let her be happy." "What kind of father does that? A father who cares about the family's honor." Saliva flew from my father's mouth. "You don't understand, you brat. You have no name, you have nothing, but I do. And I wasn't going to let a daughter of mine—" The punch came so fast I didn't even see it properly. Lucas, who had never fought in his life, who was peaceful and gentle, threw a right hook straight to my father's face. The sound was horrible, a dry crack, bone against bone. My father staggered backward, fell sitting on the floor with his hand on his face, blood dripping from his nose. The entire church was silent for 2 seconds, and then it exploded in applause. People applauding, shouting, "That's right! Serves him right!" It was surreal. Lucas shook his hand, which must have been hurting, and crouched down at my father's level. "You just lost your daughter, and you just lost your honor too, because now everyone knows the kind of man you really are." That's when the real confusion began. Augustus, my brother, came running at Lucas, shouting, "You hit my father, you bastard!" But Lucas's friends held him before he got close. My mother had fainted in some lady's arms, and the church security guards, 2 police officers who had been hired by my father himself to provide security for the event, stood there, not knowing what to do. It was Father Anselm who made the decision. He descended from the altar, walked to the officers, and said with authority, "Officers, Colonel Sterling committed a serious crime here today. Defamation, slander, moral damages, and there's still evidence on the computer over there. I, as a representative of this church and this community, request that you take appropriate measures." The officers looked at each other, uncomfortable. One of them had known my father for years, but the other, younger, nodded. "Father's right. Colonel Sterling, you're going to have to come with us." "You don't have the authority to arrest me," my father yelled from the floor, still with his hand on his bleeding nose. "I know the police chief. I'll end your careers." "You can try." The younger officer helped my father up, holding his arm. "But with 300 witnesses to what you did and digital evidence, I think it'll be hard for you to get away with this." As they took my father out of the church, him shouting, threatening, throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child, the guests moved away from him with disgust. People who used to bow their heads in his presence now spat on the ground after he passed. The fall was quick and brutal. When he passed by me, still at the altar, he stopped and looked at me. And in that look there was so much hatred, so much venom, that I felt a chill. "You betrayed me," he hissed. "You chose this nothing instead of me. And I will never forgive you for that. I don't need your forgiveness." My voice came out firm for the first time. "I needed to free myself from you. And today, finally, I did." He spat on the floor, near my feet, and was dragged out the door by the officers. Lucas came running back to the altar, hugged me tight. I collapsed again, crying. But now it was a different cry. It was a cry of liberation, of the end of a nightmare. "It's over," Lucas whispered in my ear, stroking my hair. "It's over, my love. He can't hurt you anymore." Father Anselm approached, still holding the crucifix. "My children," he said with a choked voice, "what happened here today was a desecration of this house of God. But it was also a demonstration of true love, the love that sees beyond lies, that defends and protects. Do you still want to get married?" Lucas and I looked at each other. And even with all the confusion, with my dress torn, with my face swollen from crying so much, with the scandal still echoing through the church walls, I smiled, and he smiled too. "Yes," we both said at the same time. "Yes, we do." And there, in that chaotic church, in front of the guests who had stayed, about half left too embarrassed or shocked to continue, Father Anselm married us. It was a short, simple ceremony, without pomp. But when Lucas kissed me, when he pulled me close and sealed that commitment, it was the truest kiss of my life. Those who stayed applauded, cried, hugged us afterward, asked forgiveness for having judged, even if only for a few seconds. And we forgave. Because that day, even though it started as the worst nightmare, ended as the day of my liberation. In the following months, my father was prosecuted. I, with the help of a lawyer Lucas knew, filed a lawsuit for moral damages, defamation, and slander. The evidence was irrefutable: the email, the fake video, the 300 witnesses. My father tried to use his influence, tried to buy people, but justice this time was faster. He was sentenced to pay a heavy fine and to perform community service. He lost the honorary title he had received. He lost society's respect. He lost everything. My mother, poor thing, never fully recovered from the shame. She divorced him a year later, one of the first women in Asheville to have the courage to do that at the time. And she came to live with me and Lucas. She spent her last years in peace, away from that horrible man. As for my father, he died alone, in 1985, at 71 years old, bitter and isolated. I didn't go to the funeral. I felt nothing when I heard about his death. Just an emptiness, a feeling that a bad chapter I had already turned had ended a long time ago. And here I am, my dear friends, 53 years after that day that almost destroyed me. 53 years married to the man who saved me, who defended me, who loved me when no one else believed in me. Lucas, my dear Lucas, is here by my side to this day. He's 79 years old now, retired for a long time, but still tinkers with those computers of his in the little office we set up in the second bedroom. We never left Asheville, you know. This city that was the stage for my worst moment was also the stage for my greatest victory. We continued living here, built our life here. We bought a simple house with 3 bedrooms in a quiet neighborhood away from downtown, far from that big, gloomy house where I grew up. Our house is full of light. I insisted on that. Big windows in every room, light curtains, flowers in every corner. Because I learned that light chases away the ghosts of the past. We had 3 children: Maurice, who's 51 now and is a history teacher here in Asheville; Helen, 48, who's a nurse at the regional hospital; and Gabriel, the youngest, 45, who followed in his father's footsteps and works with information technology. Only now, it's much more advanced than what his father did. All 3 are married, gave us 7 beautiful grandchildren who are the joy of my old age. My mother, Ondine, lived with us from 1973 until 1992, when she passed away. It was 19 good years where she could finally be happy, without fear, without having to lower her head to anyone. She helped raise my children, cooked those wonderful dishes she had learned from her family in Charleston. And when it was time to go, she was at peace, surrounded by love. It was everything I always wanted for her. Today my routine is calm and full of small joys. As I already told you at the beginning, I spend a good part of my days here in the kitchen, making these preserves and jams that have become my trademark. I started making them for our own consumption, for family gatherings, but then neighbors started asking, church friends started ordering, and today I sell at the farmer's market that happens every Saturday in the square, that same square where I met Lucas. Look at the beautiful irony of life. I wake up early, put the kettle on for coffee, and go to the backyard to pick fruits or get the ones I buy at the market. Peaches, figs, oranges, strawberries when they're in season. Then I come to the kitchen, put on my apron, tie back my hair, which is all white now, and start the process. It's meditative, you know, chopping the fruits, cooking to the right point, sterilizing the jars, filling them one by one carefully, closing the lids. Each jar that comes out perfect is a small victory. Lucas stays in his office, tinkering with computers, fixing something for a neighbor, or simply reading news on the internet, something that fascinates me because when we met, the internet didn't even exist. But from time to time he appears in the kitchen, grabs a jar of jelly, runs his finger through it and tastes it. "It's perfect, my love," he says, giving me a little kiss on the forehead. And I melt, even after 53 years. We spend afternoons together. Sometimes a grandchild or two comes for lunch, bringing news from school, asking for help with homework. I love having the house full of children again. They run through the backyard, climb the apple tree, play with the cats we adopted. It's noise, it's mess, but it's the good noise of life happening. At night, after dinner, Lucas and I sit on the front porch, which we surrounded with plants. There's jasmine, there are roses, there are colorful geraniums. We stay there, holding hands, watching the street movement, people coming back from work, children playing, and we talk about everything and nothing. About the grandchildren, about the news, about plans for the weekend. And you know what's most beautiful? I'm no longer afraid. That fear that accompanied me throughout my childhood, that feeling of always walking on eggshells, always waiting for the explosion, that died. I'm free. I own my life. I choose how to live each day, and I choose to live with joy, with gratitude, with love. Sometimes, when I'm filling the preserve jars, I think about that scared girl I was, about that 23-year-old Camilla kneeling on the church floor thinking life was over. And I wish I could go back in time and hug her and say, "Hold on tight, sweetheart, because the best is yet to come. True love will save you, and you'll be so, so happy. Because I am happy, my dear friends." After everything I went through, after being betrayed by my own father, humiliated in front of everyone, I found peace. I found love. I built a beautiful family. And today, making these preserves here in my light-filled kitchen, with my husband in the next room and the certainty that the grandchildren will show up on the weekend, I can say, it was worth it to resist. It was worth it to fight. It was worth it to believe that better days would come. And they came, my loves. Oh, how they came. My dear friends, my loves, you who have accompanied me this far in this story so painful, but also so beautiful. I need to tell you some important things from an open heart. If you're going through a situation similar to mine, if you have a father, a mother, a family member who controls you, who manipulates you, who would rather destroy you than see you happy and free, I want you to know something. You don't deserve that. No matter what they say, no matter how many times they say it's for your own good, that it's because they love you, that it's to protect the family honor. True love doesn't control. True love doesn't humiliate. True love doesn't destroy. What my father did to me wasn't love. It was sick obsession with control. It was wounded ego. It was pure evil. And it took me years to understand that, to accept that the problem was never with me. The problem was always with him, with his inability to truly love, to see his daughter as a person and not as property. And if someone is trying to tarnish your name, create lies about you, falsify evidence to make you look like someone you're not, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. The truth always comes out. It may take time, it may be painful, but truth has a strength that no lie can overcome. In my case, it was a small birthmark that saved my life. In yours, it might be something else. But it will be something, because light always overcomes darkness. Seek help. Don't stay silent. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a teacher, a religious leader, a therapist, the authorities in your area. In every country, in every city, there are people and organizations ready to help those suffering family abuse, manipulation, control. You're not alone. And for those of you who have someone by your side, a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, who believes in you even when the whole world doubts, thank them every day for that person. Because Lucas didn't have to stay. He could have believed that video, could have abandoned me there. But he chose to look with the eyes of love, chose to really know me, chose to defend me. And that made all the difference. True love sees beyond appearances, beyond accusations, beyond lies. True love knows your heart and won't be fooled. And now, my dear friends who have accompanied me to the end of this story, I need you. If this video touched your heart, if you learned something here with me, I ask you, subscribe to this channel now. Click that red button. Turn on the bell, because I have so many other stories of overcoming to share. So many other grandmothers with experiences that can help someone, that can save a life. And leave me a comment down below with just one word, truth. Just that. So I know you watched until the end, that you're with me in this chain of support and love. Leave it there, truth. Because truth is the most powerful thing that exists, and together we'll spread it throughout the world. Do it now. Don't wait another minute. Because while you wait, there's someone who needs to find this video, who needs to hear that it's possible to survive, it's possible to be happy after horror. I love you. God bless you. And always remember, you're stronger than you think. A kiss from this grandmother here, straight from Asheville, with all the love in the world. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time of day you found this video. I love connecting with the Grandparents' Tales family all around the world. My own brother would throw me on the bed and scream, "I'm going all out until you pass out." He was the city champion, but at home, I was his punching bag, until the day I grabbed the scissors and destroyed what he loved most. Hello, my dears. How are you all doing? I hope you're well, healthy, and surrounded by lots of love. My name is Martha Louise Sanders. I'm 71 years young, and today I'm here in my simple little house in Hickory Creek, Tennessee, the same small town where I was born and raised. You know Hickory Creek is famous for its beautiful countryside and friendly folks, right? But today I want to share with you a very different story, one I've carried in my heart for over 50 years. I'm sitting here in my living room, in my favorite armchair, the one my late husband, God rest his soul, bought at a clearance sale in the neighboring town about 20 years ago. It's a bit worn, but it's been my companion every afternoon. Next to me is my little side table with the embroidery I'm making for my granddaughter, Isabella. You know, my dears, I discovered embroidery later in life, after I turned 60, when I moved back here. It happened like this. When I returned to Hickory Creek after decades living away, I felt a bit lost, you know? The neighbors were different, houses had changed, even the town square looked different. Then a neighbor, Mrs. Geraldine, God bless her, saw me looking sad on the porch and came over to talk. She brought some fabric, colorful threads, and said, "Martha, come learn something with me." And that's how I discovered my hands had a knack for this art. Today I embroider tablecloths, dish towels, pillowcases. It's therapy, you know? Each stitch I make is like a prayer, a good thought coming from the heart. The house here is small, 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and a little bathroom. But I have a nice porch where I put some plastic chairs and planted some flowers. I have begonias, violets, and some herb pots, basil, mint, chamomile. In the early morning, when the sun is still cool, I'm out there watering and talking to them. My children, I have 3, all married with their own lives, always say, "Mom, you talk to the plants." And I answer, "Well, who says they don't listen?" Now, before I continue my story, I'd like to make a special request to those of you watching. Tell me here in the comments, from which little town are you watching me? And at what time of day did you find this video? Early morning with your coffee, after a warm lunch, or in the late afternoon when the sun is setting? I always read all the comments with great affection, and I'm so happy to know where you're from, and when you take a little time out of your day to listen to this grandma's stories. Tell me, okay? Let's create a chain of caring from corner to corner of this great country of ours. And if you can, click that like button down there and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales channel. This helps this grandma a lot to continue telling these stories I carry in my heart. Each new subscription is like a hug I receive from you. Well, now I'm going to tell you a story I've never really told anyone, not even my own children. It's a story that hurts, but needs to be told. A story about how my own brother almost broke me, but in the end taught me that sometimes you have to fight in a way nobody expects. It's about the time when I was just a scared little girl, living in fear inside my own home because of someone who should have protected me. I was born right here in Hickory Creek on March 15th, 1954, in a small wooden house on Elm Street. Nowadays, that street doesn't even exist anymore. They built new constructions there. It was a simple house, one of those old Southern homes with 3 small rooms, my parents' bedroom, another little room that I shared with my brother Bobby when we were small, and the living room that also served as a dining area. The bathroom was way in the back of the yard, and to take a bath we used a big aluminum tub that my mother heated water for on the wood stove. My father's name was William Sanders. Everyone knew him as Bill, and he worked at the railroad depot in Hickory Creek. Back then, the trains still came through regularly, bringing tourists to our beautiful countryside. Dad was a short man, thin, a man of few words, but hard-working like nobody else. He'd leave at dawn, when it was still dark, and only return late afternoon, always with that smell of rust and machine oil stuck to his clothes. My mother was Elizabeth Ann, but everyone called her Betty. She was the opposite of Dad, talkative, laughed loudly, and knew everyone in town. She worked doing alterations from home, fixed clothes, made dresses for girls who were getting married, embroidered trousseau linens. Her sewing machine made noise all day long, and I loved sitting on the floor next to her, watching those colorful threads turn into flowers and beautiful designs on fabrics. Bobby, Robert William Sanders, was 3 years older than me. When I was about 5, he was already 8 and everyone's favorite. Oh, my dears, how handsome that boy was. Light brown hair, wavy green eyes that came from Mom's side of the family, and even at that age he was strong, full of energy. Dad always said proudly, "This boy is going somewhere in life, you'll see." And Mom would get all silly. My beautiful Bobby, my little champion. Our routine was quite simple, as was customary for humble families in the South back then. We'd wake up early, before the rooster crowed. I'd help Mom light the fire in the wood stove, fetch water, our house didn't have running water, and prepare breakfast, black coffee, homemade biscuits that she made every week, sometimes cheese we bought from Mr. Anderson's farm. After Dad left for work and we had breakfast, Bobby and I would go to school. The little schoolhouse was about 4 blocks from home, and we'd walk, me always running behind him who walked fast. Bobby was always popular at school. The boys wanted to be his friend because he was strong and brave, and the teachers liked him because he was smart and got good grades. I, on the other hand, was always quieter, a bit shy. I liked staying in my corner, drawing or playing with the rag dolls that Mom made for me from fabric scraps. I had a favorite doll, Rosie, made from pink flowered fabric with yellow yarn hair. I took her everywhere, talked to her, told her all my secrets. Afternoons were free for play. Bobby was always in the middle of the neighborhood kids, organizing baseball games, flying kites, inventing competitions. I preferred staying close to home, playing house with the neighbor girls, Teresa, Mrs. Josephine's daughter from next door, and Marlene, who lived 3 houses down. But already at that age, when I was about 6, 7 years old, I started noticing strange things about my brother. He'd always been bigger and stronger than other children, but he started getting kind of, how can I explain, too aggressive in games. When he played ball, he always wanted to win, and if he lost, he'd get really angry, not that normal childish tantrum. It was an ugly anger that left the other boys kind of scared. And with me, he started having weird games. I remember once, I must have been about 7, he called me into the room and said he was going to teach me Indian wrestling. He knocked me down on the bed and kept holding me tight by my arms, heavy on top of me, while I asked him to stop because it was hurting. He'd laugh and say, "Don't stop, weakling. You have to learn to defend yourself." When I finally got out from under him, I was all bruised on my arms, but when I showed Mom, she just said, "Oh, honey, it's sibling play. Your brother doesn't mean any harm." It was always like that. Anything I complained about, Bobby, Mom, and Dad defended him. "It's just playing. He's teaching you to be strong. That's what siblings do." And Bobby kept noticing he could do whatever he wanted to me, and nobody would scold him. Another day that really marked me was when I was playing in the backyard with my Rosie. Bobby came and snatched the doll from my hand, saying he was going to test if she was resistant. He started pulling, stretching, and suddenly, crack, he ripped off her poor head. The yarn that was her hair got scattered all over the floor, and I started crying desperately. It was my favorite doll. He just laughed and threw the pieces on the ground. She wasn't resistant after all, just like you. When Mom saw the damage, I expected her to scold him. But no. She just said, "Oh, Bobby, why did you do that to your sister's little doll?" And he, with that angel face he knew how to make so well, answered, "Sorry, Mom, it was an accident. I was just playing." And she, "Okay, son, go play with something else." I never got another doll like her. Mom said she didn't have money to buy new fabric just for that I could play with the other smaller dolls I had. But it was never the same. And so went my childhood here in Hickory Creek. The good memories mixed with these strange moments that, at the time, I didn't quite understand. I just knew that my brother, who everyone admired, who was handsome, intelligent, and strong, sometimes did things to me that scared me. But back then, children didn't question adults, and if Mom and Dad said it was normal, then it must be normal, right? At least, that's what I tried to believe, as I grew up in that little house on Elm Street, not knowing that the worst was yet to come. When I turned 13 in March 1967, things started changing in a way I could never have imagined. Bobby was already 16, and my God, how that boy had grown. He was becoming a real man, tall, broad, with muscles that seemed to grow from one week to the next. His hair was still beautiful, wavy, light brown, which he kept long to almost his shoulders, as was fashionable at that time. The girls in town sighed when he walked down the street. It was that year that Bobby discovered wrestling. A man called Coach Oswald had arrived in Hickory Creek from Nashville, who set up a kind of gym in a rented garage near the railroad depot. He taught wrestling, that wrestling we saw on Mrs. Ziegler's television. She had one of the few TVs in the neighborhood and let the kids watch on Saturday afternoons. When Bobby saw those big men grappling in the ring, applying moves with strange names, he was mesmerized. He came home that day saying he was going to be a wrestler, that he was going to be champion, that he was going to make lots of money and become famous. Dad and Mom got excited. Imagine their son becoming a real wrestler, just like the ones on TV. "My son will be the pride of Hickory Creek," Mom would tell the neighbors. And Dad, who was always a man of few words, smiled proudly and said, "This boy has the strength of a bull. He was born for this." Coach Oswald accepted Bobby as a student, and that was it. From then on, my brother lived at that gym. He'd leave school and go straight there, only return home at nightfall, all sweaty, smelling like a man, with those muscles getting bigger and bigger. He started eating like crazy. Mom cooked food that seemed to be for a family of 10 just to keep up with his appetite. Eggs, meat, milk, bananas, everything he said he needed to gain muscle mass. And along with the muscles, his arrogant attitude also grew. Bobby had always been kind of a bully, but now it was impossible. He thought he was the owner of the truth, the strongest in Hickory Creek, the future champion. He talked about beating up anyone who disrespected him or the family. Our parents were proud of this champion's personality, but the worst was with me. The games he had with me when we were little turned into something more serious, more frightening. Now he said I was going to be his practice dummy at home. "I need to practice the moves," he'd say, "and you're going to help me, little sis." The first time he really did this to me was on an April afternoon. I remember like it was yesterday. I was in the bedroom, lying on my little bed, reading a book from school. It was Charlotte's Web, which I loved. Mom had gone out shopping, and Dad hadn't returned from work yet. The house was empty, just me and him. Bobby entered the room as if he owned the place. He was only wearing shorts, all sweaty from training, with those huge muscles looking like they were going to explode. Hair stuck to his forehead from so much sweat, but still handsome, shiny. "Get up, Martha," he said, with that voice that was already getting deep like a man's. "I'm going to practice some moves." I sat on the bed, holding the book against my chest. "Practice how, Bobby? Go practice at the gym." He gave a laugh that gave me chills. "The gym closed early today, and I need to practice some holds. You're going to help me." "I don't want to," I said, trying to get off the bed. But he was faster. He grabbed me by the arm and threw me back on the bed with a force that left me dizzy. "I didn't ask if you wanted to," he said, climbing on top of me. "Coach Oswald said that a real wrestler has to train every day, even at home. And you're going to stay quiet right there." And that's how the hell of my life began. He threw himself on top of me with all that weight. And people, how heavy he was. He must have weighed about 150 pounds of pure muscle crushing my skinny 13-year-old body. I felt like a cement bag had fallen on top of me. "This move is called total immobilization," he explained, as if it were a class, while pinning me down with his arms and legs. "The opponent can't move or breathe properly." And it was true. I couldn't breathe. His weight was crushing my chest, and I started to panic, thrashing like a bird trapped in a cage. "Stop, Bobby! I can't breathe!" But he just laughed. "That's how it's supposed to be. Coach Oswald said the move is only right when the other person runs out of air. Hang in there, weakling." I hit his arms, his back, trying to push, but it was like trying to move a mountain. He was much bigger, much heavier, much stronger, and the more I struggled, the more he seemed to enjoy it. "Don't resist, Martha. Stay still, and it'll pass." And he increased the weight even more, crushing my little body until I started seeing bright spots in front of my eyes. When he finally got off me, I spent a few minutes unable to speak, just gasping, trying to get air back into my lungs. My ribs hurt, my back hurt, and I felt like I'd been run over by a car. "Done," he said, all satisfied, as if he'd done a good job. "The move worked perfectly. You almost passed out, right? That's how it should be." When Mom came home from shopping, she found me still kind of dizzy, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What's that face, honey? Are you feeling sick?" "Bobby, I started to say, but Bobby appeared in the bedroom doorway, all smiles. "Martha helped me practice some moves, Mom," he said, with that angel face he knew how to make so well. "She's a really cool sister, helps me train when I can't go to the gym." And Mom, instead of asking if I was okay, was proud. "Oh, how wonderful, honey. You should support your brother. He's going to be a famous wrestler, and you can say you helped him train." I looked at her face, then at his face, and understood it was no use saying anything. Nobody would believe me. Or worse, they'd believe and think it was right. And that's how that terrible routine began. Every time Bobby came home and nobody was around, he'd call me for training, always with the same excuse, that he needed to practice moves, that I was helping him become a better champion, that it was for his own good. But I knew it wasn't. I saw in his eyes something bad, a strange satisfaction when he saw me struggling to breathe under all that weight. It was like he enjoyed seeing me small, weak, powerless. And the worst part is that everyone in Hickory Creek was starting to talk about Bobby as the town's future champion. People would stop Mom in the street to praise her son, to say how strong and handsome he was getting. "What a blessed boy you have, Mrs. Betty. He's going to be successful in life." If they only knew what that blessed boy did to me inside the house, when nobody was watching. But back then, children didn't talk about certain things to adults, and I didn't even know how to explain what was happening. I only knew I was scared, very scared of my own brother, and that fear was growing along with him. After that first time in April, the training sessions became routine in my life. Bobby had discovered he could do whatever he wanted with me and still be praised for it. "How nice that your sister helps you train, son," Mom would always say. And he'd smile, satisfied, knowing he'd found the perfect excuse. Coach Oswald's gym was becoming successful in Hickory Creek. Every weekend there were demonstrations at the town square with students showing off moves to the crowd. Bobby became the star of those demonstrations, the youngest, the most handsome, the strongest. People would clap, shout his name, "Go, Bobby, show them, champ." And the more famous he became out there, the more terrible he became with me at home. It was like he needed to take out all that pressure of being Hickory Creek's golden boy on someone, and that someone was me. The training sessions started happening almost every day. He'd come home from the gym, all sweaty and agitated, and look for me around the house. "Martha, come here, I learned a new move today." It was always with that fake excitement, as if he was going to teach me something good. But when we got to the bedroom, always my bedroom, because it was smaller and only had my single bed, his face changed completely. He became a person I didn't know. His eyes would get different, kind of glazed, and a strange smile would appear on his face. "This move I learned today is called thoracic pressure," he explained to me one May afternoon while pushing me onto the bed. Coach Oswald said it's one of the most effective to leave the opponent without reaction. I already knew what was coming. My 13-year-old body started trembling just seeing him approach. "Bobby, not today. I have a headache." "A headache has nothing to do with wrestling training," he said, already climbing on the bed. "Stop being fussy and stay quiet there." His weight had increased even more. Coach Oswald was making him eat protein, take vitamins, do specific exercises to gain muscle mass. He must have been about 165 pounds by then, maybe 175, all solid muscle, heavy. And me? I was a skinny girl of about 90 pounds soaking wet. When he threw himself on top of me, I felt like the whole world was collapsing on my chest. The bed creaked, sank under the weight of both of us, but especially his. He positioned himself in a way that all that weight concentrated on my chest, on my lungs. "The secret," he'd say, as if giving a lesson, "is to distribute the weight just right so the person can't expand their chest. Like this." And he'd press even more, leaving me breathless. I'd thrash, try to push, but it was like an ant trying to move a rock. He'd just laugh at my desperate struggle. "That's it, struggle. That's what a real opponent will do too. The more you struggle, the better I train." My ribs started hurting constantly. I'd wake up in the morning with pain, go to sleep with pain. When I breathed deeply, I felt a sharp sting on the left side. Mom asked once, "Why are you always holding your chest, honey?" And I, as always, didn't know how to explain. "Oh, must be gas," I made up. But the worst wasn't even the physical pain. It was the humiliation. Bobby started saying horrible things while immobilizing me. "You're so weak, Martha," he'd whisper close to my ear with that hot, sweaty breath. "So tiny. Like a little bird that fell from the nest." And when I started turning purple from not being able to breathe, when the bright spots appeared in my vision and I felt I was going to faint, he'd get excited. "There, the move worked. Look, you're almost passing out. Coach Oswald would be proud." There was one time, at the end of June, when he went so far that I actually passed out. When I woke up, I was alone in the room, dizzy, with a taste of blood in my mouth. I'd bitten my tongue. Bobby wasn't there anymore. I heard him in the living room talking to Mom as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Mom, Martha was helping me with some exercises here, but she got tired and went to rest." I started having terrible nightmares. I'd dream I was being crushed by a mountain, that I couldn't breathe, that I was screaming for help, but nobody heard. I'd wake up in the middle of the night gasping, sweaty, looking at his room to make sure he wasn't there. And during the day, I lived in fear. Fear of being alone at home, fear of hearing him arrive from the gym, fear even of the sound of his footsteps on the wooden floor of our house. When I heard thump, 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 the heavy sound of his boots, my heart would race. I tried talking to Mom a few times, but without really knowing how to explain. "Mom, I don't like the training Bobby does with me." But she'd always cut me off. "Oh, honey, that's silly. Your brother is teaching you to be strong. It's for your own protection. And besides, you have to help him achieve his dream of becoming champion." And Dad? Dad was prouder of Bobby than ever. Every night when he came home from work, he wanted to hear news from the gym. "So, champ, how was training today?" And Bobby, all smiles, would tell about the new moves he'd learned, the competitions Coach Oswald was organizing. "In September, there's going to be a championship in Knoxville," Bobby announced in one of those conversations. "Coach Oswald said I have real chances of winning. I'm going to represent Hickory Creek." The whole town got excited about the news. The mayor said he'd give Bobby a stipend to go compete. The church had a raffle to raise money for transportation and lodging. Everyone said, "Our boy is going to put Hickory Creek on the map." And the more famous he became, the more intense the training sessions with me became. It was like he was saving all his aggression to unload on me. "I need to train harder," he'd say. "The competition is coming and I can't mess up." I started making up excuses not to be alone with him. I'd say I was going to Teresa's house, that I had homework to do, that Mom had asked me to help with something. But there always came a time when he'd corner me. "You've been avoiding me, little sis," he said one afternoon, blocking the bedroom door when I tried to pass. "That's no way to help your brother. Don't you want me to win the competition?" It was always like that. He'd turn my resistance into a betrayal of the family, disloyalty to his dream. And since I was just a 13-year-old girl, without knowledge, without support, I'd always end up giving in. Around that time, I'd lost weight, was even skinnier. I couldn't eat properly. My stomach was always upset with anxiety. Mom even commented, "This girl is too skinny. Could she have worms?" But it didn't go beyond that. The family's attention was all focused on Bobby and his training. One August afternoon, when there were only a few weeks left until the competition, he came home more agitated than usual. "Martha, come here quick." His voice had a different urgency, more intense. When we got to the room, he was sweating more than usual, his eyes shining in a strange way. "Today I learned the most powerful move of all," he said, with that terrible smile. "It's called Complete Finisher. Coach Oswald said only the most experienced wrestlers can apply it properly." I swallowed hard, trying to back away, but he'd already closed the door. "Bobby, not today. I'm feeling sick." "The opponent is the one who's going to feel sick when I apply this move on him," he said, advancing toward me. "Come here. You're going to help me perfect it. It's for the competition." And that day, for the first time, I had the real certainty that my brother could kill me. The weight, the pressure, the duration, everything was more intense. And in his eyes, I saw something that terrified me. He was enjoying not just seeing me without air, but seeing me afraid of dying. It was like he'd discovered a terrible power over me and was testing how far he could go. And I knew, deep in my scared little girl's heart, that if I didn't do something soon, one day he'd go too far, and I wouldn't be able to wake up after the bright spots disappeared from my sight. The last week of August 1967 was when everything reached its limit. Bobby was in terrible anxiety because of the approaching competition. There were only 10 days left until the championship in Knoxville. Coach Oswald was pressuring him to train more, to get stronger, to perfect the moves. And all that pressure fell on me. "I need to train every day now," he'd say, with those eyes shining in a way that gave me chills. "I can't miss a single day of practice. You're going to help me, right, little sis?" That week, the training sessions became daily torture. Every single day when he came home from the gym, he'd come straight looking for me. It didn't matter if I was doing homework, helping Mom, or simply trying to exist in peace. He'd always show up with that terrible smile. Training time. Monday arrived like a warning from hell of what was to come. Bobby showed up at the school gate when I got out of classes, something he never did. "Let's go, Martha. Today is a special training day." The tone in his voice was different, more serious, more frightening. "I can't, Bobby. I promised Mom I was going to help her with—" I started making up an excuse. "Mom already knows you're going to help me," he cut me off, taking my backpack and throwing it on his shoulder. "I already explained to her that I need intensive training this week. She was even proud. 'How wonderful that your sister supports you like this, son.'" And he imitated Mom's voice in a way that made me angry and sad at the same time. On the way home, he explained what he called the final preparation schedule. Coach Oswald said that in the week before an important competition, the wrestler has to simulate real combat situations every day. And you're going to be my official training partner. Training partner. As if I had a choice. As if I wasn't just an object in his hands. When we got home, Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Oh, how nice you arrived together. Bobby, son, your little sister here is a sweetheart for helping you like this with training. Not every sister does that." Bobby smiled, that fake smile he knew how to make so well. "That's true, Mom. Martha is really special. She helps me a lot to improve my moves." And there I was, standing, wanting to scream that it wasn't help at all, that it was torture, that it was fear, that it was pain. But the words wouldn't come out. Because who would believe? Who would imagine that Hickory Creek's golden boy was using his sister as a punching bag? "Today we're going to train resistance time," he explained to me when we got to the bedroom, closing the door as always. "I'm going to apply the move, and you have to hold out as long as possible without passing out." Coach Oswald said that in a real competition, the opponent will resist a lot. I need to know how long it takes for a person to give up completely. When he said, "give up completely," a chill in my stomach told me this wasn't going to be like the other days. There was something different in his eyes, a cruel determination I'd never seen before. "Bobby, I don't—" I started to protest, but he was already climbing on the bed. "No, I don't, Martha. Today is serious. I'm going to time it properly." And he showed the watch Dad had given him as a birthday present. "Let's see how long you last before passing out." His weight that day was even more crushing. He must have gained more muscle, more density. When he threw himself on top of me, I felt like a truck had run over my chest. The bed groaned, sank, and I felt like I was being swallowed by the mattress. "Timer on," he announced, as if he were a sports coach. "Let's see your real resistance." And the pressure began. But it wasn't like the other times. He was being scientific, methodical. He'd apply the weight, wait for me to start struggling, relieve it a little so I wouldn't pass out, then increase again. It was like he was testing exactly where my limit was. 30 seconds, you're turning purple. 45 seconds. Oh, look, you started shaking. 1 minute. The little eyes are rolling back. He narrated my agony as if it were a scientific experiment. And the most terrible thing, I could hear in his voice that he was enjoying it. It wasn't just training. It was pleasure. Pleasure in seeing me struggling to breathe, to not die. 1 minute 20. Interesting. You're lasting longer than last week. You must be getting more resistant. When he finally got off me, I spent about 5 minutes coughing, trying to get air back into my lungs that felt like crumpled paper. He wrote something in a little notebook. "Excellent! You held out for 1 minute and 37 seconds before starting to pass out. You're improving." And he smiled with genuine pride, as if I'd done something impressive. 1 minute and 37 seconds without being able to breathe properly. 1 minute and 37 seconds, feeling like I was going to die. For him, it was just training statistics, data to improve performance. Tuesday was when he decided to test move variations. Coach Oswald said that a complete wrestler has to master the move in all possible positions, he explained, dragging me to the room again. "Today we're going to do the complete test. You on your back, on your side, on your stomach, half sitting, all angles." Each position was a different kind of agony, a new form of terror. On my back, I saw the ceiling spinning as his weight crushed my chest, and I could see his face above me. Those glazed eyes, mouth half open in concentration, an expression that wasn't my brother's. It was a dangerous stranger's. On my side, I felt my ribs being pressed against the mattress as if they were going to break. The weight concentrated differently, pressed the organs, made a kind of pain I'd never felt before. It was like being crushed from the inside. But on my stomach was the worst. With my face buried in the pillow and all that weight on my back, I could barely breathe even when he eased up a bit. The pillow got wet from my tears, and sometimes I felt like I really was going to suffocate, that I was going to die right there, with my face stuffed in the old cotton pillowcase. "This position here is deadly," he said, satisfied, turning me on my stomach for the 4th time. "The opponent can't even scream for help. It's perfect for finishing a fight quickly." And it was true. With my face in the pillow and all that weight on my back, I couldn't even moan. It was like being buried alive, like being already dead but still feeling everything. "I'm going to write down the time for each position," he said, always with that little notebook. "On your back, 1 minute 40. On your side, 50 seconds. On your stomach, 2 minutes 10. This is the best." When he finally stopped, I was shaking like a leaf. Not just from lack of air, but from real terror. For the first time, I looked at my brother and thought in so many words, he can really kill me and still say it was a training accident. His face when he looked at me during these tests wasn't a brother's face. It wasn't the face of someone who loved me, who cared about me. It was the face of someone studying an object, seeing how far they could go without breaking it completely. Wednesday was the day that changed everything. Mom left early to spend the day at my aunt's house in the next county. Aunt Zelda had gotten sick, and Mom went to help take care of her. Dad had taken an extra shift at work to earn a little extra money for Bobby at the competition. It was just me and Bobby at home, the entire day. "How lucky," he said at breakfast, with that smile that made me want to vomit. "Today we're going to have all day to train properly. I'm going to simulate a complete competition. It'll be like a real competition, with several rounds, intervals, everything proper." My God, how long that day was. The living room clock never moved so slowly. He made me his opponent from 8:30 in the morning until almost 5 in the afternoon, stopping only for us to eat something quick and go to the bathroom. "Round 1, warm-up," he'd announce, as if he were a radio announcer. "Round 2, basic moves. Round 3, advanced holds." And so it went, inventing excuses to use me as a rag doll all morning, all afternoon. Between one round and another, he'd drink water, eat something, stretch. And me? I'd lie there half dead, trying to catch my breath to endure the next one. "This here is really professional training," he'd say, all proud. Coach Oswald would be impressed if he saw my level of dedication. In the noon round, something in my head started to break. It wasn't just my body being destroyed. It was something inside my soul, my will to live. I was there, under that weight, and for the first time I thought, maybe it would be better if I really died. Maybe it would be better to stop suffering. And it was at that moment that he said something that woke me from the trance of despair. "You know, Martha, you're getting good at this. You barely struggle anymore. You're learning to accept the move, not to waste energy resisting." And he gave that little laugh I hated. Who knows, maybe one day you'll become a wrestler too. Of course in women's wrestling, right? It would be fun to wrestle against you for real in a ring. It would be interesting to see how far you can go before breaking completely. The coldness in his voice, the way he talked about hurting me as if it were fun, as if it were an interesting experiment. At that moment, even with my mind kind of clouded from lack of air, I had a crystal clear certainty. My brother was no longer my brother. He was a monster using my body to satisfy something sick, something rotten that had grown inside him. And worse, he was enjoying not just hurting me, but seeing me lose the will to resist. It was like he wanted to break me completely, turn me into a doll that didn't even react anymore. "In the final round of the afternoon," he said, it was almost 5 o'clock, "I'm going to apply my secret move, the one I created myself, based on everything I learned. I'm going to call it the Tennessee Finisher. It'll be my secret weapon in the competition." The secret move was the most terrible thing he'd ever done to me. He pinned me in a way that concentrated all the weight on my lungs, but at the same time trapped my arms and legs in a way that I couldn't even move to try to resist. It was a total, complete immobilization. "The beauty of this move," he explained while I felt life fleeing from me, "is that the opponent is completely defenseless. Can't move, can't breathe, can't do anything. Just wait for consciousness to go away." And that's exactly what happened. I felt my consciousness drifting away, like I was floating away from my own body. I saw everything from above, my skinny little body under that enormous weight, my purple face, my eyes rolled back. And I thought, with a strange calm, this is how I'm going to die. At 13 years old, in my own bedroom, by my own brother. When I woke up, I was alone in the room. The house was silent. I looked at the clock. It was almost 6 in the afternoon. I'd been unconscious for over an hour. Bobby hadn't even stayed to see if I was alive. He simply finished the training and went to do something else. I got up slowly, dizzy, with a taste of blood in my mouth. I'd bitten my tongue, and the pillow was stained with a mixture of blood and saliva. My ribs hurt so much I could barely breathe properly. And when I looked at myself in the small mirror on the wall, I almost didn't recognize myself. I was too thin, with deep dark circles, lips still kind of purple, neck with red marks. I didn't look like a 13-year-old girl. I looked like a ghost, a shadow of what I was before. That's when I heard Bobby in the living room, talking on the phone with someone, probably Coach Oswald. "I trained all day today, Coach. Tested my new move several times. I'm confident for the competition." "Oh, my sister? She's great, helped me a lot. She's a very good training partner, never complains." Never complains, because I couldn't complain, because nobody would believe, because I was just a scared girl in a family that only saw the champion son. Thursday was when I tried, for the last time, to avoid being alone with him. I spent the whole day at Teresa's house, made up that I had to help Mrs. Josephine with a deep cleaning, organizing closets, anything that justified me not coming home until nightfall. Teresa's house was small and simple like ours, but it was a refuge. There I could breathe properly, laugh at the silly things she said, play with dolls without fear. For a few hours, I could forget there was a monster waiting for me at home. "You've been kind of strange, Martha," Teresa commented while we played in her backyard. "Quieter, sadder. Did something happen?" For a moment, I thought about telling her everything. But how to explain? How to say that my own brother, the town's pride, was using me as a practice dummy? How to say he enjoyed seeing me almost dying? It's just, "My brother has been very nervous because of the competition," was all I could say. "And when he gets nervous, he gets more angry." "Oh, I see," she said, not understanding the gravity. "Older brothers are like that, right? Mine also gets unbearable when he's worried about something. If she only knew what kind of unbearable my brother was. When I got home at nightfall, Bobby was waiting for me on the porch, sitting in Dad's rocking chair. In the dark, with that big, still figure, he looked like a threatening statue. "Where were you all day?" he asked, with that low voice that meant danger. "At Teresa's house, helping Mrs. Josephine," I answered, trying to go straight inside the house. But he got up and grabbed me by the arm, hard. His hand was so big it closed almost entirely around my skinny little arm. "You're avoiding me, Martha." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "That's no way to treat your brother. Especially now, with only 5 days until the most important competition of my life." "Bobby, You were just running away from your duties as a sister," he cut me off, pulling me toward the hallway. "You promised to help me train. You promised to support me. And now you're running away like a spoiled child?" "I didn't promise anything," I murmured, more to myself than to him. But he heard, and his face changed completely. It got dark, dangerous, as if I'd said the worst possible offense. "Didn't promise?" he repeated, with that low, threatening voice. "So you don't want me to win the competition? You don't want me to bring pride to the family? You don't want Dad and Mom to be proud?" And there, in that dark hallway, with him holding me too tight, I understood there was no way out. Any resistance from me was transformed into betrayal of the family, into selfishness, into lack of support for his dream. "You're going to help me train now," he said, pushing me toward my room, "and it's going to be heavy training to make up for the lost day. So you learn not to abandon me when I need you most." And it was. It was the heaviest, most violent, cruelest training up to that point. He was nervous, anxious, and took it all out on me. He applied move after move, turning me from one side to another on the bed as if I were a sandbag he could punch and kick at will. "The competition is going to be tough," he'd mutter while pinning me down for the 5th time in a row. "There are guys from Memphis, from Nashville, from all over Tennessee, all more experienced than me with more training time. I need to be perfect. I need my moves to be lethal." And the more nervous he got talking about the competition, the more violent the training became. At one point, he pinned me so hard I felt something crack on the left side of my chest. The pain was so strong, so sharp, that I screamed, a muffled scream because I could barely breathe, but that came from the depths of my soul. "Quiet!" he hissed, covering my mouth with his big, sweaty hand. His hand tasted of salt and sweat, a bitter taste that made me nauseous. "You want to wake up the whole neighborhood? What are you going to say, that I'm hurting you? Who's going to believe that? Everyone knows you helped me train. Everyone knows you're the most supportive sister in the world." And there, with his hand covering my mouth, with that weight crushing my chest, with the rib, or whatever it was, throbbing with pain, I had a clear, crystalline vision of my future. Either I did something to stop this in the next few days, or one day he was really going to kill me. It wouldn't be out of malice. It would be an accident, carelessness, from being too focused on training. And everyone would say, "What a tragedy. The girl who wanted so much to help her brother become champion. What a terrible training accident." And Bobby? Bobby would pretend he was devastated, would cry at the funeral, would tell everyone how I was a special sister, how I died doing what I loved, helping him achieve his dream. And it would even become a beautiful story, a local legend. The girl who died supporting her wrestler brother. When he finally got off me that night, I lay for a long time in the dark, feeling the pain in my chest, listening to him brush his teeth in the bathroom, listening to him go to his room and lie down. And that's when I started really planning. It wasn't just a scared child's fantasy anymore. It was a real, concrete, desperate plan. I lay there, in the darkness of my room, listening to him snore in the next room, thinking about what I could do. I couldn't confront him with strength. He had 3 times my weight and was trained to fight. I couldn't tell my parents. I'd already tried and they never believed. I couldn't run away from home. It was 1967. 13-year-old girls didn't go around alone, and besides, where would I go? How would I live? But there was one thing I could do. One thing that would hit him where it hurt most, that would destroy what he loved most about himself. One thing that would show him I wasn't just a defenseless doll he could break at will. The hair. Always the hair. Every day, religiously, after his shower, Bobby would spend about 20 minutes in the bathroom combing, putting on brilliantine, arranging every strand of that golden mane. He had several combs, different types of pomade, even a special brush he'd asked Dad to buy in Knoxville. "My hair is my trademark," he'd always say, admiring his reflection in the small bathroom mirror. "It's what sets me apart from other wrestlers. When I enter the ring, everyone will remember the Tennessee Lion because of the hair." Tennessee Lion. That's what he wanted to be known as, because of the golden wavy mane that bounced when he moved in the gym's ring. "A wrestler needs to have personality," he'd explain to anyone who wanted to listen. "Needs to have a strong image. And my image is this, the young lion of muscles and golden mane." He loved that hair more than he loved any person, more than he loved the family, more than he respected his own sister's life. That hair was his identity, his self-esteem, his source of power, and that's exactly why it was going to be his downfall. I lay there, planning every detail. Mom's sewing scissors were stored in the Singer machine drawer in the living room. They were good scissors, sharp, that she used to cut thick fabrics. They'd serve perfectly. The best time would be at dawn, when his sleep was deepest. Bobby always slept like a rock after intensive training, his body exhausted, relaxed, confident he was safe in his own home. The competition was the coming Saturday. Today was Thursday. Friday would be my last chance, because after that, he'd travel to Knoxville, and if he came back from there as champion, he'd be unbearable for good. And if he came back defeated, he'd take out his frustration on me in a way I might not survive. It was now or never. Friday night, going into Saturday, at dawn. And it was going to be the hair. That beautiful, vain hair that he loved more than anything in the world, including more than his own sister's life. And when he woke up bald, when he saw in the mirror the destruction of his trademark, when he understood he couldn't go to the competition anymore because he'd be a laughingstock, then he'd know what it was like to feel small, defenseless, humiliated. He'd know what it was like to have something precious destroyed by someone who should protect you. Friday night, August 29th, 1967, was the longest night of my life. Lying in my little bed, I listened to every sound in the house. The living room clock going tick-tock, the wind shaking the roof tiles, Dad snoring softly in his and Mom's room, and especially Bobby's heavy breathing in the next room. All that day, he'd been even more agitated. The competition was the next day. Saturday morning, he was going to travel to Knoxville with Coach Oswald and 2 other students from the gym. The whole town was talking about it, everyone wishing luck to our champion. "Tomorrow is the big day, little sis," he'd told me at dinner time, with that smile I knew all too well. "After I win this competition, I'll be able to train even more seriously. Who knows, maybe I'll open my own gym here in Hickory Creek, right?" The idea of him having his own gym, where he could train as many girls as he wanted, gave me a chill down my spine that almost made me give up everything. Almost. But then I remembered the still painful rib, the marks on my neck, how I'd been unconscious for over an hour on Wednesday. And I knew I couldn't let him come back victorious from that competition. Couldn't let him become even more powerful, even more untouchable. I waited until almost midnight. Dad and Mom had been asleep for a long time. Bobby had gone to bed early, saying he needed to rest well to be in shape. I heard him in the bathroom doing his usual ritual, brushing his teeth, combing his hair, putting on the special pomade that made the locks shiny. "Tomorrow everyone will see the Tennessee Lion in action," he'd murmured to the mirror, thinking nobody was listening. "They'll see why this hair is my trademark." When I finally heard him snoring, that heavy snore of someone exhausted from training, I slowly got up from bed. My bare feet made no sound on the cold wooden floor. I'd memorized every creaky board, every place to step without making noise. First stop, the living room, to get Mom's scissors. The Singer sewing machine was there, imposing, in the corner near the window. In the bottom drawer, along with the threads and buttons, were the big scissors Mom used to cut thick fabric. When I grabbed the scissors, my hands were shaking so much I almost dropped them. They were heavy, cold, and the blades gleamed in the faint light coming through the window. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at the object that was going to change everything. "You can do this, Martha," I whispered to myself. "You have to do this." I went back to the hallway, walking like a ghost. His bedroom door was ajar. Bobby always slept like that because he said he needed air circulating. I stood in front of the door, listening to the regular snoring, trying to gather courage. I pushed the door slowly, inch by inch. It creaked softly, but he didn't wake up. The room was dark, but the streetlight coming through the window was enough for me to see his figure on the bed. My God, how big he was. Even sleeping, even relaxed, that body took up almost the entire bed. One arm thrown out, legs stretched, breathing making his chest rise and fall heavily. And the hair. Oh my God, the hair. Spread on the pillow like a golden halo, each strand shining in the dim light. It really was beautiful, wavy, silky, the kind that made girls sigh when he walked down the street. But I didn't feel anything anymore seeing that beauty. I only felt anger. Anger at how he used that appearance to fool everyone, to be seen as an angel while he tortured me in secret. I approached the bed, holding the scissors with both hands so they wouldn't shake so much. He was sleeping on his side, face turned to the wall, leaving the nape and sides of his hair well exposed. I took a deep breath and positioned the scissors at the base of the hair, very close to the neck. The first lock I cut was thick, heavy. The sound of the scissors cutting was louder than I expected, a crack that seemed to echo throughout the entire room. Bobby moved, mumbled something incomprehensible, but didn't wake up. My heart was beating so hard I felt it in my throat, but I continued. Lock by lock, I cut everything. It wasn't a careful cut, it wasn't meant to look good. It was meant to destroy. I'd cut very short in some places, leave uneven tufts in others. In some spots, I cut almost to the scalp. As I cut, a strange sensation took over me. It wasn't just revenge, it was power. For the first time in a long time, I was in control. I was doing something important, something that was going to change everything. The locks fell on the pillow, on the floor, on my nightgown. Golden hair everywhere, as if I'd killed an animal with beautiful fur. And in a way, that's exactly what I was doing, killing the Tennessee lion. When I finished with the hair on his head, I looked at those thick, well-shaped eyebrows that completed his masculine beauty. Why stop at just the hair, I thought. And I cut the eyebrows too, leaving only weird, uneven tufts that gave a bizarre aspect to his face. The result was devastating. The head that before had a beautiful mane now looked like a sick person's, someone who'd been through some tragedy. Tufts sticking out to one side and the other, huge gaps where the pink scalp showed, strange marks where I'd cut too deep. I gathered as much cut hair as I could and took it to the kitchen. I lit the fire in the wood stove and threw it all in there. The smell of burning hair rose through the chimney, a strong kind of sweet smell that stuck in my nostrils. I washed the scissors in the sink and put them back in the sewing machine drawer. I went back to my room and pretended I was sleeping, but actually I just lay there, waiting for the moment when he was going to wake up. It must have been about 6 in the morning when I heard him moving. First were the normal sounds of someone waking up. Yawn, stretch, feet touching the floor. Then I heard him walking to the bathroom, and then, "Ah!" His scream echoed through the entire house, a cry of despair and horror that even woke up the neighbors. It was a scream that didn't sound human. It sounded like a wounded animal, betrayed, destroyed. My hair! My hair! Who did this to me? I heard him running through the hallway, banging on doors, screaming like crazy. "What's happening, boy?" Dad shouted, still half asleep. But when they saw Bobby there in the hallway, with that bizarre head, with those weird tufts sticking out everywhere, even they were speechless. My son," Mom stammered, bringing her hand to her mouth. "What? How?" "Someone cut my hair," he screamed, with tears running down his face. "Someone came into my room and destroyed everything, destroyed my life." That's when I pretended to wake up, coming out of my room rubbing my eyes as if all that noise had woken me from sleep. "What's happening?" I asked, with the most innocent voice I could make. When Bobby saw me, his eyes filled with murderous fury. "It was you!" he screamed, advancing toward me. "It could only have been you! But Dad grabbed him by the arm. "Calm down, boy. It couldn't have been your sister. Look at her size. How could she do that without you waking up?" And it was true. I was so small, so skinny, that it really seemed impossible for me to have done that. The very size difference between us worked in my favor now. But, Bobby stuttered, looking from me to our parents, trying to process what had happened. "But who? How?" "Must have been some burglar," Mom said, still in shock. "Someone who came in at night, who I don't know, wanted to humiliate you before the competition." "The competition!" he shouted, as if only at that moment had he remembered. "I can't go to the competition like this. Everyone will laugh at me. I'll be a laughingstock." And he collapsed, literally collapsed. That big man of almost 175 pounds threw himself on the hallway floor and started crying like a little child. Loud sobs, desperate, of someone who'd lost the most important thing in their life. "My hair, my trademark, my Tennessee lion," he whimpered, running his hands over his destroyed head. "How am I going to compete like this? How am I going to show up in town like this?" Dad tried to console him. "Son, hair grows. In a few months you—" "A few months!" Bobby screamed. "I lost the only opportunity of my life. The competition is today. Coach Oswald is waiting for me, and I'm going to show up there like what? Like a clown?" And the more he cried, the more I felt a strange satisfaction growing inside me. Finally he was feeling small, humiliated, destroyed. Just like he made me feel every day. "I'm not going," he said suddenly with a defeated voice. "I'm not going to the competition. I can't show up like this in front of everyone." Mom tried to argue. "But son, you trained so hard. You can't give up because of—" "Because of!" he exploded. "Because of what? Look at me. Look at what they did to me." And really, seeing him there, with that bizarre head, those ridiculous eyebrows, it was impossible to imagine him in a ring. He who'd always been so vain, so concerned with appearance. How was he going to bear being seen like that by hundreds of people? At 8 a.m, when Coach Oswald arrived to pick him up, Bobby didn't even want to leave the room. Dad had to go to the door to explain that there was an accident and that Bobby couldn't participate in the competition. "What kind of accident?" the coach asked, worried. "It's complicated to explain," Dad stammered, "but the boy can't compete today. I apologize for all the inconvenience." The coach left upset, taking only the other 2 students, and all of Hickory Creek found out that same day that the future champion hadn't shown up at the competition. Speculation ran wild, that he'd gotten sick, that he'd gotten injured in training, that he'd gotten scared. But nobody knew the real truth, that the Tennessee lion had been sheared by his own little sister. Bobby spent the whole day locked in his room, refusing to eat, to talk to anyone. Every now and then, I'd hear him crying softly, as if he were in mourning. And me? I spent the most peaceful day I'd had in months. For the first time in a long time, I could walk around the house without fear. For the first time, he was more fragile than me. But I knew that couldn't last. I knew that at some point his anger would overcome his sadness, and then I was going to pay dearly for having done that. Very dearly. That's why, when night fell that Saturday, I pulled Mom aside and whispered, "Mom, can I go spend a few days at Aunt Zelda's house to help take care of her since she's sick?" Mom, who was still kind of in shock from everything that had happened, agreed without even thinking much. "Of course, honey. It's actually good for you to get away for a bit. Your brother is very shaken. He'll need a few days to recover." Sunday morning early, Dad took me to the station and put me on the bus to the next county. When the bus started moving away from Hickory Creek, I looked through the little window and saw my hometown getting smaller, disappearing in the distance. I didn't know yet, but that was the last time I'd see Hickory Creek as my home. From that day on, a new life was going to begin, far from the monster who'd disguised himself as a brother for so long. And when the bus finally disappeared around a curve and Hickory Creek completely vanished, I smiled. I smiled for real, for the first time in months. The Tennessee lion was dead, and I was free. And here I am today, my dears, at 71 years old, back in my Hickory Creek hometown after almost 40 years living in the next county with my Aunt Zelda. Life took many turns until I got to this simple little house where you find me today. I lived with Aunt Zelda until she passed away in 1995. They were good years of healing, where I learned that not every adult in the family hurts you. She took me in, made me study, taught me to sew properly. It was there I met my Jack, a good man, a railroad worker who respected me from day one. We married in 1973, when I was 19. Jack knew my story. I told him everything before the wedding. And he said something I never forgot. "Martha, the past doesn't define who you are today. You're the bravest woman I know." We had 3 beautiful children, Charles, Regina, and Anthony. I raised them with lots of love, but always alert, always protecting. I never let anyone hurt my babies the way I was hurt. Jack passed away 5 years ago from heart problems. I miss him every day, but I'm not sad. He gave me a family, gave me love, showed me that a real man protects, doesn't hurt. I returned to Hickory Creek in 2020 because I missed my hometown. The house where I grew up doesn't exist anymore. They built an apartment building in its place. Bobby. I never saw him again after that day. I heard he left town shortly after I did, went to try his luck in Memphis. They say he never came back. Today, my joy is my grandchildren. Isabella, Charles's daughter, is 8 years old and is my sweetheart. Every Friday she comes to sleep over with me, and I teach her to embroider, tell stories, make that cornbread she loves. My children live nearby, all married, all happy. Charles works at City Hall, Regina is a teacher at the public school, and Anthony has a mechanic shop. They take good care of this grandma here. Afternoons are my favorite. I sit on the porch with my embroidery, watch the street activity, chat with neighbors. Mrs. Geraldine, who taught me to embroider, still lives 2 houses down, even at 85. In the morning, I wake up early, water my plants, make a nice cup of coffee, and sit here in the living room, listening to my little radio. Sometimes a grandchild comes to do homework with me, sometimes neighbors stop by to chat. It's a simple life, but it's mine. A life I conquered after so much struggle. I don't have wealth, but I have peace. I have a family that loves me. I have my little house. I have my freedom. And most importantly, I have the certainty that that scared 13-year-old girl grew up and became a strong woman who raised good children and who never again let anyone take away her right to be happy. My dears, if you're going through a situation similar to what I went through, I want you to know something. You're stronger than you think. I was just a skinny 13-year-old girl, and I managed to free myself from my tormentor. You can too. I learned that sometimes we don't need physical strength to overcome who hurts us. Sometimes we need courage to hit what matters most to the person. In my brother's case, it was his vanity. Everyone has a weak point, and when we discover what it is, we can turn the tables. I discovered that whoever hurts us inside the home counts on one thing: our silence. They know it's difficult to report someone from your own family, but there's always a way out. There's always someone willing to help. In my case, it was my Aunt Zelda. I understood that time heals, but only when we distance ourselves from whoever makes us suffer. It's no use staying close waiting for the person to change. Sometimes you need to have the courage to start over far away, even with fear. Today, I know that no matter how long you suffered, you can rebuild your life. I did it. I got married, had beautiful children, created a family full of love. The trauma didn't define who I became. If someone in your family or someone close is hurting you, seek help from authorities, organizations that protect people in situations of violence. Anywhere in the world, there are people willing to help. Don't suffer alone. And remember, my dears, whoever really loves doesn't hurt. Whoever protects doesn't attack. Don't accept excuses from those who use you as an outlet for their problems. The revenge I took wasn't the ideal solution, but it was what a desperate girl could do at that time. Today, there are other paths, other ways to seek help and protection. But if you've made it this far with me in this story, I want to make a special request. Subscribe to Grandparents' Tales channel and turn on notifications right now. This story needs to reach those who are suffering in silence, needs to show that there's always a way out. Share with someone you know needs to hear this. And you who watched until the end, comment only the word courage down below. That way, I know you understood the message and that you're with me in this chain of strength and protection. My dears, life can be difficult, but it's always, always worth fighting for better days. I'm living proof of that. Do this now, don't wait another minute. A hug from this grandma who learned that being small doesn't mean being weak.